curious, show of hands, who still has like any of their old uniforms? I'm just curious. A little bit, yeah. It's just, you do? Really? I thought you said you got rid of all of them.
No.
Not to put you on the spot. It's just interesting to me because I did get rid of, I mean, in movements with moving, I had to get rid of stuff, you know, over time, so I don't have anything of that. But speaking of history, not only am I a veteran, I'm the daughter of a veteran. I need to raise this a little bit more. My father, Oscar Mel Lunsford, served at the end of the Korean War. He was out a good 10 years before I came along. But Oscar didn't really speak much about his service. He didn't claim veteran status. He didn't belong to any veterans groups or bond with any of the guys from his old units. I think Oscar reveled in his long hair civilian status. And when I expressed interest in the military, he adamantly said, "No, Kate, don't do it." He died in 2009, and when I finally saw his paperwork a few years ago, I was surprised. Surprised to learn that Oscar had served in both the Navy and the Air Force. Who knew? And how did this happen? I had no idea, so I did some research. Let me see if I can get this straight. In 1951, a law is passed that requires all males between 18 to 26 to register for the draft. Dad would have been 19. Then, in 1952, Congress enacts the Reserve Forces Act, which that required all drafted or enlisted to 8 years obligation of military service. Wow. And then after the term of active duty was completed, all were assigned to standby reserve and could be called back for war or a national emergency. 8 years. That seems like a really long time. Which is probably why they changed it in 1955. From the date on Dad's paperwork, I think he was drafted into the Air Force and upon leaving active duty signed up for the Naval Reserves. I do know for certain that Oscar left the service, got married, started college, and then began having children with my mother in that order, and he never went back to the military. One other thing that I learned is that the draft laws actually exempted him from future recalls because he was married and had children. There were lots unspoken with my dad. So now, mostly I have his actions on which to reflect. For example, when I went through basic training, we carried M16 rifles. And then as an officer, I wore a pistol. It was a Beretta, M9, along with an NBC mask when we were deployed, and other stuff too, but that was kind of the bulk of it. NBC mask, that was a gas mask to protect against nuclear, biological, and chemical attacks. But I also carried my experiences, both good and bad. Funny, I'm realizing now that I didn't share certain stories with my dad either. I didn't want him to worry about me. But now I wonder what Oscar might have carried. I mean, physically, yes, what were his weapons, his uniform and such, but also emotionally. From my memories, I've come up with 3 things I think my dad carried back from the war. First, Dad wore those black military glasses for years. He's in old family photos from my childhood wearing those government issue types with dark, thick frames. They were officially called TEDs. That was their actual military nomenclature, TED, Tactical Eye Device. Ted's, I thought they fit his personality. He was an engineer and quite bookish, but thankfully he upgraded by the time I was in high school, thank God, and he got rid of the pocket protector too. But those glasses, they called those BCDs when I served, birth control devices. Birth control devices because the glasses allegedly made you less attractive so you couldn't get laid. I know, wait a minute, that can't be true. Anecdotal evidence from my family that those glasses were not a form of birth control. My mother was pregnant 8 times, 2 miscarriages, and 6 births. Wow, I had not made this connection before, but the BCDs failed him. Did they call Ted's BCDs during his time? In my time, they went from C rations to MREs. Those are some fun acronyms, huh? But again, I don't know. The second thing was Dad smoked cigarettes for years. Thankfully, he quit when I was in junior high. Interesting fact, cigarettes were included in C rations until 1976. It's true. Soldiers would get a mini pack of either Lucky Strike or Camel cigarettes along with waterproof matches in their meal rations. And smoking was encouraged. Who can forget the sergeant in charge saying, "Hey, smoke them if you got them," and then everyone would take a break and smoke. They even did this in basic training. So smoking was actually even rewarded and accommodated. Oscar left service in '54. He met my mother when she visited her boyfriend, who was Dad's roommates. I will spare you the details of family lore, but the truth is I don't even know most of those details either. The Great Generation. Not so great about talking things out, but also I bear some responsibility because I don't know that I asked. The third thing Oscar carried back from the war, I experienced firsthand that Dad had something akin to post-traumatic stress. The terms battle shock and combat fatigue were used in my father's day. He didn't have an official diagnosis, nor did my family have a name for it, but when he would nap on the living room couch, we learned pretty quickly to stand way back and quietly call out, "Dad, Dad, are you awake?" Because if you went too close to him and tried to shake him awake, bam, Dad sprung up from the couch ready to fight. He'd land in a judo stance with his fists up in defense. It was kind of scary to see my father react violently. It took a few seconds, but he'd come to and realize that he was home. Over time, this stopped. Besides a startle response, Dad was quick to agitate and seem stressed. He'd get very quiet and lock his jaw as if he was biting back his anger. These are more signs I've learned that are symptoms of PTS, but was that all from the war? Or was that for the totality of his life? I mean, Oscar came back from the war, quickly married, then worked while going to school, and then had 6 daughters over 12 years. It's understandable life was stressful. I looked this up too. PTSD wasn't determined as a diagnosable condition until 1980, when it was listed in the DSM. Not sure about anyone else, but it seems the term PTSD wasn't used widely in our culture until after 9/11. Oh, I do remember a few tidbits. I did hear from my dad, but they were more like anecdotes. Anecdotes are usually short and amusing. My dad seemed like short complaints. "I taught judo to the platoon. They talked about me in front of me in Spanish." Or, "I remember guarding these nuclear missiles. That was in Florida." Dad served in Florida? Nuclear what? Oh, I guess I was young and busy and I didn't have the time to truly truly be curious and understand what he was saying, but no excuse, right? I do wish I had said, "Tell me more, Dad," and recorded his responses. Just to hear about his military service, but not just to hear about his military service, but to hear more about his life in general. See, Dad was born in 1932, and at the age of 9, he heard that Pearl Harbor had been attacked over the radio as he sat playing on the living room floor. His older brother was born in 1918. Such history. So Oscar was opposed to me joining the military, but once I was in, he was very proud. And he told me that often. "Kate, I'm so proud of you." These days, with the world so changed from when he was here, I truly miss him. I'd say to him, "I'm proud of you too, Dad." If I could offer one piece of unsolicited advice to others, it is this. Ask questions and really listen to the older people in your life. Capture their voices if you can to help keep them with you forever. And with that, I want to say thank you for listening to me and all of us veterans today. I'm thankful what remains unchanged is that we have each other and we have our stories.